hold for each 20 years of life. So in 85 years and over, 10% of persons will die, as compared to those that are in the 25, only about 0.01% of those would die. And that is what has been observed so far. So initially, and I know that Paul M., if I can call him that, will do a fair amount of the medical side. But in the initial stages, when the virus infects the lungs, there is pathology or symptoms in the lung. There is difficulty breathing, etc. But then there is a cascade of reactions that take place, and it is something that is called the cytokine storm, which means that the body overproduces these chemical messages, which actually cause issues not just in the lungs itself, but in the blood vessels, in the brain, in the liver, kidneys, in the digestive system, and in the heart. And these things are seen even if persons do not get severe infections. So it's one of the challenges that we face with this virus and the disease that it causes. What we know about the immune response to SARS-CoV-2, so in the initial phase, when the person is infected, they will go through this phase where they are producing large numbers of the virus as the cells mass produce viruses. Then they will start to have mild to moderate illness. A number of these persons will develop severe illness, which will require hospitalization. They will have severe issues in terms of breathing difficulty. And some of these will be critically ill and need intubation, need ventilation. They will be candidates for the ICU. It is among these that are critically ill that will die. And unfortunately, we're seeing too many of these persons dying, as the disease progresses. So the aim of vaccination, one, is to cut the number of persons that will have critical illness, and the vaccines are known to do that. And by cutting critical illness, then cutting death. Severe illness will also be cut as well. And we're hoping that even mild to moderate illnesses will also be cut. And there will be low levels of viruses in the system, so transmission is low. And that is, the sequence of things that we hope. Some of these have been shown quite convincingly based on the clinical trials for the vaccines, that there is significant reduction in critical illness, in severe illness, and also in mild and moderate illness and viral titers or numbers of virus particles. So it means that there is less chance of persons spreading the viruses once they are vaccinated. For an ideal vaccine, we're talking about greater than 90%. They should be high safety and low cost. And I won't be saying much more about these because Paul McFarlane will be dealing with these aspects in his talk. The approval process. So traditionally, vaccines take between 10 to 15 years to develop and get approval. So that is from basic research to assess safety, efficacy through clinical trials, and to get approval, whether it is through the WHO, FDA in the USA, or the European Medicines Agency in the EU. And there are other approval agencies in Australia, in Japan, etc. Why so fast for COVID-19 vaccines? Well, there have been significant previous research on SARS and MERS over the last 10 plus years. There is a host of research on mRNA vaccines for cancer. And yes, lots of work is going on in cancer, trying to understand the diseases that form cancer And there has been, importantly, unprecedented collaboration between scientists, drug manufacturers, governments, and donors to get COVID-19 vaccines developed and approved. An EUA, or the Emergency Use Authorization, one of the questions that was asked, is a mechanism to facilitate the availability and use of medical countermeasures, including vaccines, especially during public health emergencies such as COVID-19. And this is from the FDA website. So, in the process, they look at what issues of quality and consistency. They look at what is available from the manufacturers in terms of development and manufacturing information and the capacity. Can they ramp up production if as needed? They look at the acceptable known and potential risk-benefit profiles for the vaccines. They look at the data from the completed phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 trials. And then there is independent review by an advisory committee, and usually this data, all of it is available, published, and on repositories that persons can actually go and look and assess for themselves. And then there is the post-authorization monitoring, especially in terms of safety, by the FDA or CDC and the EMA, that's the European Medicines Agency.
Professor Brown,
Yes.
you are halfway at your slides, and I'm just wondering if the rest of your presentation could be incorporated in questions a little later on, as we really need to give Dr. McFarlane some time and then allow for a good amount of
Okay.
time for questions. Is that okay with you, sir?
Well, I can pause at this stage, and then he can go, and then we'll see how we proceed
So,
after that.
fair enough, fair enough. Thank you
Okay.
so much. One of the things that came out of your whole presentation is the 10 to 15 years that a vaccine has to, is the time span to develop a vaccine. But seems we have done it within a short period of time. But you did qualify that we had previous research that helped the process of getting it here quickly. So that does help, really.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Um, all right. So, Paul, Dr. Paul McFarlane, are you ready to go?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm ready to go.
All right. Our numbers are now at 60, so we're growing. So that's good. Keep your time, my friend.
Good deal. All right. Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here back with my alma mater, really discussing this very important topic. Very timely, I must say. I have no disclosures. No, I really wanted people to understand that, especially as it regards to the COVID-19 vaccines, the hesitancy, the myths, the seemingly public burden to get these vaccines and apprehension, we have to consider three major things. And I consider them science, statistics, and common sense, and sense as well as even reasoning as well. And I think Dr. Brown just did an excellent job at really looking at the science that's out there to rationalize how these vaccines are developed. We have to use statistics to look at what are the trends, and what are the facts associated with the actual use of the vaccines, as well as how are we going to now employ these vaccines in correlation to what is actually happening in our public health system.
Dr. McFarlane, can I just interject here just 1 minute? So to our audience, we're asking you to, if you have any questions, to start putting them in the chat in capital letters, so that after Dr. McFarlane is done, then we can address those questions as they appear. All right, so if you have questions, put them in the chat, and we'll pick them up from there and pose them to the two gentlemen. Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. McFarlane.
Yeah, I just got a notice that my slides are showing in presenter mode. So I'm going to just reshare the screen now.
Okay.
I'm not sure what's happening there. Let me just go back. Is everybody seeing my slides now?
Yes, you're seeing.
Okay, perfect. So I just want to share this COVID-19 experience, and one of my colleagues, Dr. Inga Ford, She's a pulmonary critical care specialist who deals with COVID-19 patients day in and day out. And she says, being far away from many of our friends, family, and favorite things, we have spent a lot of time in airports prior to the pandemic. Invariably, we would encounter a member of the military in uniform. In the past several years, I've tried to more frequently make it a point to establish eye contact, then strategically approach at least one in a crowd and whisper, "Thank you for your service." Since the coronavirus has infiltrated our lives, I think of soldiers today and recently every day. What has become clear to me is that members of the military are severely undervalued. These brave women and men have made a deliberate decision to sacrifice their lives, physical health, mental well-being, and safety to allow us the freedom to exist without fear. Since my first case of COVID-19, I have felt an overwhelming sense of empathy. The ritual of getting ready for work has a whole new meaning. The moment my feet hit the floor, getting out of bed, it all quickly becomes real and heightens until peaking right before stepping over the threshold into the hospital building. In that moment, God takes over. You become a vessel of the work you believe in and go with your all, knowing that it has to be enough, but quietly fearing inadequacy, particularly in a time where there is such uncertainty. No time for fear, anguish, doubt, or uncertainty. No time for entitlement or self-pity. A lost moment can cost a life, and the goal needs to be a laser precision in decision-making while whispering to each potential catastrophe, "Not on my watch." Like clockwork, at the end of each shift, that fear, that soul-burning heat returns with immeasurable magnitude. This is the time when the day's events now catalog in your brain and each moment is replayed, oftentimes in slow motion. So the soldiers that stare war in the face bring their best each time, I salute in ways I couldn't understand before. Thank you is not enough. And I took the time out, ladies and gentlemen, to really highlight that because the public apprehension towards vaccines and sometimes the public's total disregard for the COVID safety measures, including social distancing, hand washing, and mask wearing, really takes a toll on us as healthcare workers. And this is a Chinese study that really reports significant mental health distresses among healthcare workers, and this is a real phenomenon that is being faced globally. Now, one of the greatest myths is that COVID-19 vaccines kill people, and especially in Jamaica and in some of our Caribbean counterparts. A lot of people think, okay, COVID-19 is here, the vaccines are made to kill Black people. That is one of the myths that I know Jermaine asked me to really highlight or to tackle. But here are the facts. COVID-19, the disease, has killed over 3 million people to date. It is actually now the third leading cause of death in the US in 2020, just behind heart disease and cancer. When you compare COVID-19 to the flu is estimated to kill up to 650,000 people annually. The mortality rate, if we're now looking locally, the mortality rate of COVID-19 in Jamaica, the last time I did this, which is maybe about a Thursday or so, stood at 1.5%. And what that translates into is that 1.5 in every 100 persons who get COVID-19 in Jamaica faces a high chance of dying from COVID-19. Oh. And these statistics are blaring. Now, we think that the COVID-19 vaccines may be employed to kill Black people, but I highly doubt it. When I look at what the disease has done to Black people globally, and especially where there are tons of statistics available in the US, you realize that this cannot be the case. When 34% or about a third of COVID-19 related deaths were among Black people, even though this group only accounts for 12% of the total US. And if you look at this closely, you'll realize, and what this chart is showing, it's showing the relationship of these things in relation to our white counterparts. And the Black people are 1.9 times more likely to die from COVID than our counterparts. And this is the reality that we face currently. Again, there has been a lot of apprehension and among the public hesitancy to get the vaccines. And that is, of course, playing out already into what has shown to be a significantly lower percentage of Black people in the US who have taken the vaccines. And if you realize here, this arrow is pointing to the 8% of the population in the US, and this figure is off of April 6th, just last week, who have actually taken up the vaccine. So, you know, I really don't want to sound very curt, but if the vaccines are really made to kill Black people, the marketers of these vaccines are not doing a good job at all, because it's mostly the white people who are getting the vaccines now, or people of white descent are getting the vaccines currently. Again, we're looking at as well, this slide is a slide to show the studies that were done, especially in the Pfizer and the Moderna trials, looking at the proportion of Black people in these trials related to our the white counterparts and people of other ethnic groups. And you do realize that there was inclusion of Black people in all the trials. And what this does, this second column right here shows what the composition of the US population is overall. And, you know, 12.3% Black. And in the Pfizer trial, of the participants, about 10% were Black, and similar for the Moderna. Astrazeneca had a little lower number, 8% of the trial participants were Black or African American. Yes, and historically there has been a disproportionate number of Black people taking part in clinical trials globally, and you know, for various reasons, and I don't want to get into that right now, but I just highlight this slide to show us that the vaccines were indeed tried and tested in Black people as well. And the efficacy data trials did show, you know, in terms of the case numbers in the different vaccine trials that were done. In Moderna, the 7 cases that occurred in the vaccine trials were actually in white individuals, not in Black people. And just to highlight, these are 7 of the symptomatic COVID-19 cases that would have occurred in persons who received the Moderna vaccine in these clinical trials, occurred in our white counterparts. The Pfizer trial, 0 cases in white, 1 case in other race or ethnic groups. In the Janssen trial, 94 cases were in white individuals, and just 37 in Black or African Americans, and 6 in Asian individuals. And AstraZeneca reported similar efficacy among all ethnicities. So what am I saying, ladies and gentlemen? I'm saying here that there is a clear evidence based on the studies, based on the trials, that there is nothing to suggest that the COVID-19 vaccines are not protecting persons of Black ethnicity. And that's why I'm highlighting it here, not to sound racial, but just to show us and just to help to, you know, to educate our peers and counterparts who still have this, that, hey, this is another thing that is made to kill the Black population. And I really don't believe it. And the studies show that this is not the case. You know, one of the biggest hesitancy I've found is persons who fear the side effect profile of these vaccines. And the most common side effects are really injection site pain, fatigue, headache, and muscle pain. When I got my vaccine, my first dose, I got Moderna. When I got Moderna, I had some injection site pain and a little soreness to my muscle. After my second dose, yes, I was very fatigued. I was having chills, some nausea, etc. That lasted a couple of days, but I recovered. And I'm sure Dr. Brown would have, you know, went further to explain that these are what is expected when something that is quote unquote foreign enters into the body and it triggers our immune response. And the fact that this is happening means that, hey, the vaccine is perhaps doing what it's supposed to do. It is triggering the body's immune response. It's identifying something foreign. It's looking at antibody development. It's looking at our T cell reaction, and other aspects of our immune system are responding. And that's why we're getting that reaction at the time of the vaccines. Some rare side effects, again, angioedema and urticaria. And these are what we're seeing in the trials. Since the authorization of Moderna and Pfizer in particular, there have been about just 4.5 per million of people who have been vaccinated who have suffered what we call severe allergies or anaphylaxis. And again, this is nothing to scare us about. Anaphylaxis is completely treatable medically in a case where it does occur. And if somebody knows they have heightened allergies or they have a history of anaphylaxis or other vaccines, these are things that in history taken at vaccine sites should be made known to healthcare providers so that these persons can be monitored in a more controlled setting to ensure that in the event that an anaphylactic reaction does occur, that treatment can be given immediately. And just to highlight that if this data, if this rate was to be translated into the Jamaican population, this would just occur in like 13.5 persons in Jamaica overall if everybody was supposed to get vaccinated. That is less than 1 person per parish. So really just trying to highlight to you how minimal it is for these even severe reactions to occur. And this is really showing you the reactions of the Pfizer and Moderna. Again, the Pfizer and Moderna, there's a much more data available on Pfizer and Moderna than it is for AstraZeneca. And I will be highlighting some stuff for AstraZeneca as well, because I do know that that is a vaccine that we have available in Jamaica. As it pertains to deaths and the COVID-19 vaccine causes deaths, the CDC has what's called a vaccine adverse events reporting system. And so far, there have been reports of 0.00167% of people who have gotten a COVID-19 vaccine in the US. There has been a report of a death. Now, we need to bear in mind that somebody dying weeks or days after getting a COVID-19 vaccine, it may not necessarily be related directly to the COVID-19 vaccine. And there has to be autopsy done, there has to be other medical records assessed, and just looking at the comorbidity, meaning, was this person going to die from something else anyway? Was this person did this person have a history of a heart attack and have heart disease? What was the state of this person who died? And most of these persons were persons who were actually in nursing homes and stuff who made these reports. So basically to date, that portal has not detected any pattern as a cause of death as a link to the COVID-19 vaccines, okay? But as a caution, the CDC, of course, has to ensure that there is a way for persons to report their symptoms after the vaccinations, as well as any adverse effects, so that they can track to see exactly what's going on in the actual public after vaccination. Now, I'm pretty sure this is on the tips of everybody's tongue, the rare blood clots that have been reported with the Astrazeneca vaccine. And just today, I saw a report where the Johnson & Johnson vaccine similarly has had 4 cases that are now being investigated. Again, very, very, very rare. The cases have mostly occurred in women under the age of 60. And again, if this were in Jamaica, there would have been 9 cases if this is the same rate. And what we also need to assess as well is that there is a difference in ethnicity and likely genetic differences among the population in the UK that would have gotten the vaccine. So to say that a similar rate would occur in Jamaica would be quite premature and quite clumsy for me to say. But if we're just using bare statistics and just say, if this were to happen in Jamaica, there will be just about 9 cases based on the rate in which it had happened in the UK at the time that I was doing this presentation. Again, what does that mean? It basically, cerebral venous thrombosis is one of the rare side effects that has been reported. And what that basically is a clot that occurs in the venous system that drains from the brain, basically. And is it treatable? Yes, it's treatable. If it is picked up early enough, there can be anticoagulants or what we call blood thinners given to help to treat these conditions. And of course, other methods as well is with the patient hospitalized. And just in case you're curious, some of the symptoms that persons can get if they develop this cerebral venous thrombosis is what the condition is called, include things like headache, loss of vision, seizures, confusions, and coma. So if you just have a bare headache after the vaccinations, I doubt this is cerebral venous thrombosis. But of course, if you have other symptoms as well, including your loss of vision, you're getting confused, your seizure activity, then for sure, these are things that you have to present to your medical practitioners and ask for further investigation to be done to ensure that you do not have one of these rare side effects. But what is happening now, I know there are countries in the UK that had halted the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine, reinstituted the use of AstraZeneca vaccine. Why? Because there is more benefit than risk associated at this point. There's a need for vaccinations. And again, there's more investigation that needs to occur in terms of whether or not there's a direct link or as opposed to it being a probable side effect. So there still needs to be investigations done to see whether or not this thing needs to be halted completely. So again, very rare, but worth mentioning. And just to highlight that Jamaica is not the only country using the AstraZeneca vaccine. In the dark green area here, you realize AstraZeneca vaccine is being used all over the globe, including Australia, several regions in South Africa, South America, in Africa, in Asia as well as, of course, in the UK and Central America. So again, a diverse ethnic population is getting the AstraZeneca vaccine at this point. And with just a few cases being reported in one particular part of the world, we have to really wonder how widespread it is or how real the link is between the AstraZeneca vaccine and this rare blood clots. But again, the studies are ongoing. The pathophysiology or the mechanism by which it causes these blood clots have been studied and have been reported in some journals. But it's too early for me to state definitively that this is a direct cause and people should not get it. At this point, I say go ahead and get a vaccine. Now, here's why, and that's just a photo of me getting my first shot of the Moderna vaccine. Why get vaccinated? It reduces your chance of severe illness and hospitalization, reduce death. There's a likelihood, and this was perhaps, I should have put this in question mark, of asymptomatic infections, because in the trials that were done with Moderna and Pfizer in particular, it did not look at asymptomatic infections. It really only looked at symptomatic infections. But AstraZeneca, even though the results were not validated because of an error that occurred initially in their trial, there was some amount of suggestion that their vaccine could reduce asymptomatic infections, or what we call people who have the virus but really don't have no sign or symptom of COVID. Okay, that's what we call asymptomatic infections. And of course, there's a reduction in the likelihood of transmission, and the microbiologist can explain more. And it makes sense if you're mounting antibodies against this virus and you're likely reducing your viral load, the probability of you transmitting this thing to somebody else is likely to be lower. But again, it's too early to definitively state this at this time. There needs to be more studies ongoing as the vaccines are rolled out across the world. There are different models. I put 75 to 80% here of population, but some specialists and some theories have pointed to as low as 60% of population that needs to be vaccinated to achieve herd immunity. And herd immunity basically is where the vaccine, as much as it's trying, is not going to cause not much more effects in the population, okay, in basic terms. But it's where most of the population or majority of the population now is immune against this virus. And of course, different models suggest from as low as 60 to up to 85, 90% in some cases. And just to show you guys just how effective these vaccines are, and I did before, there are several vaccines in circulation, but for the ones that I think most studies have been done globally on are Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson, and AstraZeneca. I'll zoom in on AstraZeneca for the purpose of time and because that's what is available now in Jamaica. The efficacy is where it says 76% in reducing symptomatic COVID-19 infection, and then 85% reduction in persons 65 years and over. And of course, 100% in reducing the rate of severe COVID, hospitalization, and deaths. And that is what we want to achieve as medical professionals. We want to keep people out of the hospital, we want to keep people feeling well, and we want to keep people to the point where they can function normally in their day-to-day lives. And that is what I think most of these vaccines are accomplishing based on the data from the clinical trials. There's a global call to get vaccinated, of course, and I just pulled this today. And as of today, at least 431 million people who have received at least one dose of a vaccine, okay? That's 5.5% of the world's population. So we still have ways to go globally in terms of a vaccination, call for vaccinations. We still have a far ways to go. There are concerns regarding the different variants and the different vaccines available. Again, I'm zooming into AstraZeneca because that is what is available in Jamaica, and I'm assuming most of our viewers are in Jamaica. The original virus, of course, based on the age group, etc., the efficacy range from 60 to 80 something percent. The B117, which is the UK variant, it has a similar efficacy. There's reduced efficacy for the B1351 variant, which is a South Africa variant. But for the P1 variant, they're saying that there's the same efficacy. I believe the P1 variant is that variant out of Brazil. Now, who should not get the COVID-19 vaccine? The only persons who so far the CDC has said should not get the COVID-19 vaccines are persons who have had a severe allergic reaction or an anaphylactic reaction to a previous dose or to a component of a COVID-19 vaccine. And some of the COVID-19 vaccines, I believe Pfizer and Moderna has what we call polyethylene glycol in there. And that is a component in the common stool softener called, or laxative called Miralax, if you guys use that product. So if you have a reaction to Miralax and it is a polyethylene glycol component in that, that is the only contraindication currently that's listed to say, well, hey, you should consider not getting the vaccine, okay? Of course, persons have been asking every day, can I get it? I have patients in clinic every day who come and say, yeah, I'm in obstetric clinic, and they say, can I get it? I'm pregnant. The current guidelines, if you read the guidelines from the American College of Obstetrician and Gynecology, the ACIP, the immunization, and CDC, currently, it's really a conversation between you and the patient to decide to get it. The reason is that the pregnant persons who are pregnant were actually excluded from the trials. So therefore, in terms of safety in pregnancy, that could not be limited, but they did do some studies in terms of animal studies that demonstrated safety in pregnancy. So, but in terms of human studies, that has not yet been established. I do know several persons who are pregnant who have gotten the vaccine. So far, they're doing well. Their babies are doing well with respect to based on fetal monitoring. So again, no evidence yet to suggest that a pregnant or lactating woman should not get the vaccine. Most of and these figures here, I'm just showing you the regions of the world that have gotten most of the vaccines or persons who have been vaccinated the most. And I just want to highlight Israel because the reason for highlighting this is to show us what it is like when it is that we have a large number of our population or a large percentage of our population getting vaccinated. And sorry, this is right.
Dr. McFarlane.
I'm out of time.
Yes. All right. All right. So I know this is really very, very interesting, and I'm hoping that the questions that we're gonna have, in a few minutes, will probably come out of the rest of both your presentations. Just something I noticed over the weekend that the resistance to taking the vaccine among Black individuals in the United States has dropped from 44 to I think 45% to 24%. I guess probably they just wanted to see whether people will topple over and die before they decided to take it, but it has fallen. So that's a good thing. All right, so Rosemary is waiting in the wings. Again, guys, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. I see a few of them have and put them in caps. See a few of them have come, but in common letters rather, but put them in caps. And we do have a list of others that we have compiled to ask the two gentlemen who are here. So I'm going to switch this to Rosemary to address the questions. Jermaine, can you unmute Rosemary if she's muted? While that is happening, Dr. McFarlane, it's just a real outlandish question. We have vaccines being rolled out now, and they're rolled out with speed in some countries, not as fast in other countries. But it's a global pandemic, so you may not get it here in your own country, but you may get it somewhere else. When is a good time do you see in the near or far future that we can kind of relax the mask the social distancing? Because I'm getting the feeling that it's going to take a while before I shake somebody's hands or give anybody a hug.
Yes, very good question. Definitely, in terms of a definitive timeline, it's very difficult to say now in terms of when exactly we can stop masking up and shaking hands. But just to highlight that after vaccination, we still have to continue social distancing. We still need to continue masking up. And of course, until we get a good proportion of our population vaccinated and achieve herd immunity, it is definitely not advisable to relax these measures at whatsoever. And you know, Dr. Baum probably spoke to it, but the more it is that we have the vaccine circulating in our population, and I like to talk about vaccine replication or life cycle like Chinese telephone. I think that's the best knowledge I can draw. In Chinese telephone, if you give somebody a message, okay, the likelihood of them transmitting the same message down the line as it goes down the line to say 10, 12, 13 people is going to change several times. And that's how that's how I draw the analogy with how vaccine life cycle and replication goes. There's going to be some change. So the idea is that the more we have the vaccine circulating in the environment or in the population, there's a higher chance of new strains and variants forming. So the more you can ensure that you protect yourself from getting the virus, okay, is a high chance that we can stop these new variants from spreading and therefore stopping infections. And again, there are still studies to show, the studies are still ongoing to show the impact of vaccinations on asymptomatic infection. And that is very important as we go forward in terms of relaxing any form of social distancing or masking measures at this point.
Okay. Dr. McFarlane, I see here on the screen, which I didn't see before, you're at slide 24 and you only have 3 more to go, well, 4 more to go, including this one. Maybe you want to just finish this up and then we go into the questions.
Okay, absolutely, no problem. Let me just share the screen again and just go back to there. I'm trying to. Is the screen being shown now?
No, not yet.
Okay, yes. Okay, perfect. All right, good deal. All right, so I believe I'm up now. So
yes,
just to show us a U.S. trend in terms of what's happening in the U.S. You know, in terms of not in terms of vaccinations, I'm sorry, but in terms of COVID cases, we saw we're between November and, you know, maybe the latter part of January into February, there's this peak that occurred, this huge surge that occurred. But now we're seeing the case numbers going down. Whether or not the vaccinations are contributing to that, very likely. You know, our national immunity as well. But definitely something to say, well, there may be a glimmer of hope, given the fact that the USA is one of the hotspots globally. And again, I was about to talk about the Israeli experience, being one of the countries that have managed to vaccinate a significant percentage of their population. And what they have found in terms of effectiveness, and effectiveness now is what we're talking about, real life situation. They are seeing that the vaccines have been effective in terms of 92% in preventing PCR confirmed infections, meaning if you go and swab somebody randomly who had COVID-19, who got the COVID-19 vaccine and they don't have any symptoms, right? It's going to show a 92% reduction in those infections. And they're seeing where there's a 94% reduction in symptomatic infections and 87% reduction in preventing hospitalizations. So that is their real life scenario since COVID-19 has started. And that's one studied out of Israel. One of the studies from a preliminary finding from a study, and this is not yet published, but it's a preliminary finding that is in the scholastic journals. In the Scottish population, they're already seeing 85% fewer hospital admissions for people who received the first dose of the Pfizer vaccines 4 weeks prior compared with those who were unvaccinated. Similarly, one shot of the Astrazeneca version was tied to a reduction in hospitalizations up to 94%, according to an article in the Associated Press. Now, as part of these Israeli studies, show that the viral load decreased by 4-fold for infections occurring 12 to 28 days after the first dose of the vaccine. So again, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We're already seeing where the vaccines are showing great effectiveness in different parts of the world. What we do know currently, it takes about 2 weeks to develop immunity after the COVID-19 vaccination. For other coronaviruses, such as the common cold, SARS-CoV-1, and the Middle East respiratory syndromes, immunity from natural infection wanes over time. Research suggests immunity from Moderna and Pfizer vaccine likely lasts 6 months. And again, we have to bear in mind that these are relatively new vaccines. They were just put out late last year. So we have to look at modeling to say, or what, a statistician can better look at modeling to say how likely is it that this will translate 10, 20 years down the line in terms of immunity from the vaccines. But so far, what is known is that it will last at least 6 months currently. Delaying the second dose of a COVID-19 vaccine could increase the likelihood of an escape variant that Dr. Brown mentioned earlier emerging, even though there's some infectious disease specialists who actually suggest that sometimes when you delay the second dose of the vaccine, it increases what you call immunogenicity, or the ability for the body to mount antibodies against the COVID-19 prior to getting a second dose. Would booster doses be needed? Maybe, not sure. Again, a lot of studies need to occur to determine these. And again, just remind everybody, it's not abnormal to get boosters for vaccines. Boosters exist currently for several vaccinations. Your Tdap vaccine, I give my Tdap, my tetanus boosters every 10 years to my patients. Again, MMR vaccines, if you have, for anybody who has young kids, you know that MMR vaccine requires boosters, as well as the HPV vaccine. And of course, if in countries that practice HPV vaccination, depending on the age in which somebody begins a series, will determine if they need a 2-dose or 3-dose of the HPV vaccine. What we don't know is exactly how long natural immunity lasts. Some studies say 3 to 6 months. Some say 3 months. That 3 to 6 months window there is what has been posited for natural immunity. That means that after somebody gets COVID-19, how long does those antibodies last to prevent them from getting a new infection, okay? And what we definitely don't know is exactly how long immunity from the vaccines will last beyond 6 months that we currently know. All right, those are some of my references. And of course, you can share the questions in the chat or email me if you have any more concerns.
All right, thank you so much, gentlemen. Very valuable information. And there have been some questions posted in the chat. So we're now at 78 persons, so there are people who are interested in the subject. So Rosemary, I'm going to turn it over you to field those questions to the two gentlemen, see how best they can answer and help us.
Thank you, Denzel. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, some of the questions have been answered. Thank you, Dr. Brown. And so I will just take the ones that have not yet been answered. And I'm going to start with the last one at the bottom, the last one that came in. It says, why does Johnson & Johnson have only 1 dose? Any one of the doctors can take it.
Okay, I don't know if I guess I would just go ahead on this one, or Paul, you can go ahead. Well, I guess I'm calling my name.
No, well, the thing is that there are quite a number of players in terms of developing vaccines, and there are a few of them that have been experimenting with a single dose. It so happens that if you have more than a certain percentage of protection, or what we call neutralizing antibodies developing after the first dose, then that is going to be the recipe for a single dose. So that was what was found in the case of Johnson & Johnson. There are a few others that are in clinical trials that we hope that by the middle of 2021 they will be ready for emergency use authorization. So all of the others that have 2 doses, they were about 50%, 60% effective after the first dose, and then increased to over 90% with the second dose. So that is what has been found, and so that is why they have the various formulations.
Thank you. Another question that was there is someone suffering from frequent cramps in legs and plus circulation. I guess overall they have circulation issues. Can they still take the vaccine? Is that recommended?
Okay, absolutely. There's no contraindications of persons who have circulation problems currently. The vaccines, as I said, the blood clots that have been reported are blood clots in the abdomen, or what we call the splanchnic circulation, or the blood vessels within the abdomen, as well as in the brain. But there again, and the mechanism by which it has been purported that these side effects occur are quite different, I'm assuming, from the mechanism by which these persons have had their current symptoms. It's really a play on the platelets and antibodies forming against the platelets that have been really positive to cause this phenomenon, of clots in the brain and the splanchnic circulation. So quite different, I can imagine, from what has occurred in these people who are reporting these symptoms. So yes, definitely, based on the data that we have now, go ahead and get vaccinated.
The only thing that I would add to that, Paul, is that they will ask you at the center whether you're on a blood thinner. So clearly there is some concern there. But if you are in doubt, you can always check with your medic. But as Paul McFarlane says that, I mean, there is no contraindication based on what is the mechanism for causing any associated blood clots that might be linked to the vaccine.
Thank you. Our next question, what are the stats on contracting COVID-19 again, the same strain as well as a different strain after being vaccinated?
Right. I think I can probably take that. I'm not sure if they have all of the data in relation to after persons have been vaccinated. Since there are very few countries that would have achieved herd immunity based on the vaccination program, but some data is available from Brazil. So there have been 95 reinfections in Brazil, 150 in Sweden, and 285 in Mexico. So there is every likelihood, given the limited immunity from natural infection, and the fact also that there is once you have uncontrolled community spread, there is every likelihood of variants developing. Those would not be recognized by the immune system, and so they could actually cause infection and can cause disease as well.
Interesting.
Thank you. Next question, is it advisable for an individual to take two different types of COVID vaccine during the time period, meaning one type at the first jab and a second one, a different type at the second jab?
Well, the emergency use authorization speaks to that. So what is approved by the FDA or the EMA is that a person who has received the Pfizer will get Pfizer as the second dose, and same thing for Astrazeneca and Moderna, etc. They are currently doing clinical trials to see whether there is the similar benefit. But remember that the emergency use authorization is specific based on what has been presented to the FDA, so they can't vary that. But in theory, it should work. But then because they haven't presented the evidence, then they wouldn't get approval to use it.
Yes, and just to add to that, Paul, thank you. Definitely agree. So just to put it a little bit closer to home, so expert opinion currently, if you talk to an infectious disease doc or a microbiologist or a PharmD, there really is currently expert opinion to say go ahead and get and mix and match, if based on availability, of course. And the thought is that if you got one type of vaccine, for example, if you got the AstraZeneca vaccine first, it works the mechanism by which the vaccine works is it's slightly different in terms of how it's made and actually how it then goes and activates the immune system. So that's the principle. But definitely there's not yet any approval, as Paul said, for this mixing and matching. It's simply expert opinion currently, and not necessarily based on any clinical trials.
Another question we have is your views on the vaccine being developed in Cuba. I think you're probably asking if it's going to be as good as the ones on the market now or any at all. I mean, that's what I'm thinking.
Well, that would be speculative, but I think they are currently between phase 2 and phase 3 trials, so they still have a little ways to go. But once you're moving from one phase to another, it means that there has been sufficient positive results to make you go further. There are over 200 projects that are ongoing, and most of them will not actually develop anything of worth. But the Cuban vaccine is worth looking at. It's using one of the traditional methods for vaccine development. So we anticipate that they will have it approved during this year.
Thank you. How long after someone has been infected and recovered are they still contagious?
Ooh.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. So there are different models that look at in terms of how long it is that somebody is still infectious. And the thought is that, and that is why one of the criteria, I believe, for hospital discharge, I believe, if I'm going clearly, is the absence of fever and a negative PCR test. The thought is that your infectious period is actually the highest period of your infection, or the time at which you're most likely to spread the virus is actually when you're pre-symptomatic of COVID or in the early stages of having COVID-19. So that's when you're expected to actually have be more virulent and be expected to spread the vaccine at a greater rate or greater chance of spreading the virus. So to answer your question, really, I would say go with a negative PCR test and, of course, resolution of symptoms.
Just to add, though, and one of the reasons why I think locally they have slowed down on the 2 negative PCR tests is that you could actually have a positive PCR test, but only detecting dead viruses. So it means that there is very low numbers that are there. It is perhaps not infectious, but because the PCR test is so sensitive, that even if there is a single virus particle, the test might actually pick it up. So even with that, we still have to be mindful of the sensitivity of the test and what it is that is actually ongoing at the time with the patient. How long has the person been asymptomatic after developing the disease and so forth?
Thank you. I have a few questions around the mRNA vaccine. So I'm going to read them all and then you can just answer at one time. So the first one is asking for comments on the risks of the mRNA vaccine triggering an autoimmune disease. And then I have another one which speaks to the difference between mRNA technology and the traditional approach to manufacturing of vaccine. And let me see if I have any more. I think that's it, those two.
Right. And I thought that you were going to ask if the mRNA was going to change the DNA of the person,
yes.
because that is the usual one that comes. So no. So in neither case that will happen. So the messenger RNA are the codes that will tell the cell to make a particular protein. In this case, it's going to be the spike protein. Because the mutants are varying, especially their spike protein. It is part of the reason why you might have escape mutants, so that there is the potential for reinfection. And that is where that is going. So because it is making a single protein, that is going to trigger antibody production to that particular protein and then cause protection of the body or the person against the disease in later stages. The difference between the traditional and this is that instead of using a dead or inactivated virus, you're using a code so that it tells the cell to make the particular protein. Why? So there are a few clinical trials that are ongoing with weakened virus. Those are going to have a lot more challenges in terms of approval because one of the major risks for attenuated or weakened viruses is that they can be reactivated. And that has been seen in some cases in the past, and especially because of the dangerous nature of COVID-19. You would not want somebody to be developing full-blown COVID and worse, dying based on the vaccine. So none of the vaccines that have been approved now will actually cause COVID or can cause COVID because of the formulation. So it's part of the reason why the messenger RNA vaccine is so attractive, because it is novel technology. We know that it works from the molecular side. It works in the clinical trials, and that is what is driving cases down in many countries where they have been rolled out. So in brief, that is what I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the negative tests is no longer required for persons to, for example, for discharge from hospital, etc. And I think Dr. Brown highlighted that because of the sensitivity of the test, it can actually be detecting dead viruses. So I just want to clarify that it's not required for hospital discharge.
All right, somebody placed one in while you were speaking. They indicated that with the newness of mRNA vaccines, are we as early adopters pretty much as advanced test group?
Absolutely not. Remember that all of these have gone through phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 trials. So all of the vaccines that are presented for approval have had to show details of the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials. And millions of persons have received either the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine. And in fact, the Astrazeneca is a variant of the mRNA vaccine because it has the codes in an adenovirus shell. So that is what that is. So even though it is not called an mRNA vaccine because it has a different formulation in terms of how the code is coded, it's a similar kind of technology that is being used. So there's no advanced test group. This is what it is, and this is what is driving reduction of case numbers, hospitalization, and death across the world in all of the areas where the vaccines have been rolled out.
Yes, and just to add to that, Paul, there really is, yes, the newness that you speak of. For the past 10 to 20 years, there has actually been research ongoing in terms of the mRNA technology. The driver for the behind Operation Warp Speed, so to speak, for the Pfizer Moderna to have executed for emergency use authorization. Of course, it's based on the public health emergency that exists, but the technology has been there. If you look at the history with SARS-CoV-1 and the Middle East respiratory virus in the past, these are some of the technologies that the mRNA technology was actually being used to develop vaccines against those viruses. And of course, the mRNA technology, as Dr. Brown highlighted in his presentation, is actually being used in some cancer vaccines as well. So the technology, the mRNA technology, was not just developed last year out of the blue. It's something that has existed for some time now, but has been employed and adapted towards the development of the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines. So I really want to try to distinguish that thought that this is a completely new technology, but rather there has been more than 10 years, up to 20 years, I believe, of research being done on the mRNA technology.
Thank you. I'm going to group a few questions together again. They're really around the effectiveness and the booster. So one person asked if the current vaccine will now protect you from the variant that's coming up. Another one asks, what is the effectiveness of the transmission reduction by the vaccine? And somebody else wanted to know if they needed to get a shot every year for the COVID-19, and also if booster shots are now available, as some person probably will be coming up to the 6-month period. So you can take those things.
Okay, and so I think I think that it's a very good question, and it's something that even as health experts and public health experts, is a question that we have now currently in terms of the need for a booster shot. The need for a booster shot, of course, is still on the table. And again, you know, we're still in the early stages of this, the rollout then of these vaccines. So again, we have to look at how it is that the vaccines are performing amidst the current pandemic that's occurring. And of course, looking at how long immunity on the backbone of these vaccines lasts. And that will, of course, determine the need for a booster shot in the future. So again, a bit too early to determine the need for booster shots right now. Will we need it? There's a high possibility, but at this point, too early to say exactly now, but it's quite a possibility.
So just to add to that, so the Pfizer vaccine, equally effective against the original virus, the UK variants. It's much less effective against the South African and Brazilian variants. But in all cases, the second dose greatly increases antibody neutralization. For the Astrazeneca, Oxford Astrazeneca, South Africa, that is where there was disaster. So the small phase 2 trial that they had, vaccine efficacy dropped from 75% to 10.4%. And that is why the AstraZeneca was pulled in South Africa, because it is not effective against the South African variant. Novavax in the UK, 95.6% efficacy against the old strain, 86% against the UK variant. In South Africa, 60% efficacy in HIV negative persons. And the Johnson & Johnson in the US, 72% effective against moderate severe illnesses by any strain. In Latin America, 66%, in South Africa, 57%. Now, one of the things that I want to point out, and persons try to compare efficacy, using these percentages, but the first out of the blocks, the Pfizer and Moderna, were actually trialed before there was serious variants that developed and that we knew about. Most of the others, AstraZeneca, Novavax, Johnson & Johnson, they were trialed while we were having variants in the various countries. And so even though there is a lower percentage, you can't look at one vis-a-vis another one to say, well, this one has a higher percentage than the other one, so I'd rather take that one. Really, you have to compare those that received the vaccine against those that had the placebo in the clinical trial to assess the effectiveness. And in fact, all of them will be similarly effective given the current situation that we're facing with increased variants. The challenge is that boosters are likely to be required because we are racing against development of variants. So the more variants that we have in the system is the more likely that you'll have escape mutants and the need for boosters that will be protective against these variants. But it is still too early to tell. All of them so far, except for AstraZeneca in South Africa, have been proven to be highly effective against all of the variants that are circulating.
Thank you. Someone came across comments that suggested that someone with severe allergies should not take the Pfizer. Your opinion is being asked on that.
I'm sorry. Could you please repeat the question?
Sorry, I went a bit fast. The person indicated that at a presentation, it was noted that someone with severe allergies should not take the Pfizer vaccine. And they're asking, what is your opinion?
Okay, so basically, so what is currently known, it looks at if you have a history of severe allergies and your concern is it's a proper concern to have, and it's reasonable. Definitely consultation with an allergist. And I'm not sure how many allergists or immunologists we have in Jamaica, but definitely consultation with an allergist could dictate what your risk is of having a severe reaction or anaphylaxis to a COVID-19 vaccine. But currently, based on the recommendations by the guidelines that currently exist, there is no contraindication if you have a history of severe allergies. The contraindication exists if you have a history of allergies to a component of the vaccine, a known component of the vaccine, or if you have a history of an anaphylaxis or allergic reaction to a previous dose of the vaccine. And I think in my presentation, I highlighted, for example, one of the components of the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine is actually polyethylene glycol, which is found in Miralax. So if you know they have an allergic reaction to that drug, it is quite likely that you have an allergic reaction to polyethylene glycol, which is a component of the vaccine. So therefore, that would be a contraindication to you to not take that vaccine. But if you want to give it a try, if you want to go pick up some Miralax from the pharmacy and take it and see how you respond to it, maybe that can give an indication as to the likelihood of you having an anaphylactic reaction. But for sure, do it in the doctor's office where there's some epinephrine available so you can get a quick epi shot in the event of an anaphylactic reaction. But definitely currently no. If you just have severe allergies, run-of-the-mill allergies, the guidelines that currently exist does not preclude you from getting the vaccine just off the bat. And do remember that if you get an anaphylactic reaction at a vaccination site, there should be emergency drugs available to treat these reactions. So again, it's nothing to scare people about, but for sure, if you go get the vaccine and then 5 minutes after getting the AstraZeneca shot, your throat closing up, you break out in hives, you can't breathe, then for sure, the next dose, you may want to forego the next dose of that vaccine. All right. But having an allergy does not preclude you from getting the first dose. If once it is not a component of the vaccines currently in circulation.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Guys, you need to ease up on the question. I'm running out of time. Denzel, I'm begging you some more time. All right. Let me give you another 3-in-1. So this one is, can you contract COVID-19 more than once? Can you contract COVID-19 even after you have been vaccinated? And also, another one I'm going to tie in with it, does the vaccine really prevent you from getting it? Or is it just a hit or miss?
Right. So we had answered the question about reinfection with COVID. And that is especially true because of the variants that are in circulation. It is possible, although it's going to be rare, that somebody after being fully vaccinated could become infected. And remember that the vaccines are not 100% effective. They are highly effective, well over 80 or 90% effective. So there might be a small number of persons who might actually become infected. However, serious illness or even requiring hospitalizations, so far they have found out that is actually eliminated or even rarer. So that is one of the important benefits that is already shown in the real world situation. So this is not phase 3 trials. This is what since they have rolled out the vaccinations, they have actually seen. So highly effective. There is, even though it is possible, unlikely to land you in the ICU after vaccination. No, hold on. After vaccination, and you are fully protected in terms of developing maximal immunity. Remember that we said this is about 2 weeks after the second dose.
Yes, yes. So yes, definitely. I agree with Dr. Brown. There have been a few cases, some cases of persons who have had a reinfection of COVID-19. And yes, it is because based on the current literature that we have, the vaccines did not study cases of, well, in terms of Moderna and the Pfizer trial, of course, did not look at asymptomatic infection, one, and two, remember that there was not, the efficacy, sorry, in the trials was not 100%. It was 94 to 95% for those two mRNA vaccines respectively. So there still is a chance of you still contracting COVID, and you may be in that 5% or that 6% that is not, that would have had the disease. So yes, there's a chance of you getting the infection even after. But based on the trials now, all the trials show that there's a 100% protection against death, which is good because the mortality index has been high in COVID, and that's one of the things that we're trying to reduce. That's on of course on severe illness.
Thank you. All right, I am running out of time, so there are only 2 more questions that I'm going to pass to our presenters. So I ask your forgiveness before I even do so. I won't be able to take the rest of the questions. So my last 2, number 1, when vaccinated, are all ethnic groups and gender responding similarly to the COVID vaccine?
Okay, so what we have currently, I'm very happy for that question, and I knew it would have come up, and I really wish I had more time to just really go through the trial data some more. So again, this is all trial data, and what happens in real life may be a bit different from what happens in the trials. But based on the trials, okay, the trials showed efficacy, similar efficacy across all ethnic groups based on the trials that were done, particularly for the Astrazeneca vaccine, which is available in Jamaica. And I believe I had a slide up that actually showed where the efficacy was actually favored persons of Black ethnicity in some cases, because they saw where there's more cases of the events happening in the vaccination groups in persons who are non-Black. So, but yet still the overall efficacy, with just a few cases off, the overall efficacy, I believe, were similar. So I believe in terms of the actual real life scenario and what we call effectiveness, there should be some similarity going forward.
Thank you. Anthony, I see you still putting questions, but I did ask for forgiveness. So my last question, based on the USA experience, Dr. Mack, and it's directed to you, are you saying that it's only about 9 persons would have severe anaphylactic, I think I'm pronouncing that. No,
anaphylactic.
Anaphylactic reaction in Jamaica, and about 2 dying?
When I was putting that slide together, I cautioned myself because I knew it would bite me in the back.
I told you.
No. And just let me just take some time. So based on the data I had at the time, okay, the anaphylactic reactions to the Moderna and Pfizer, which are the 2 vaccines, we have Johnson & Johnson, but this data was based on Moderna and Pfizer, and it showed that there are 4.5 per million cases of anaphylactic reactions occurring in persons who are vaccinated. So I just looked at the Jamaican population and gave an estimate and said, well, if this were the Jamaican population and a similar rate were to occur in Jamaica, then the rate of anaphylaxis will be about 13.5 people. So that's all I was saying in terms of from an anaphylactic reaction. But I didn't, what I referenced after, I think when you talk about the 9 persons and 2 dying, that was not regarding anaphylactic reaction, that was regarding the case of the blood clots, the rare blood clots that were reported in the Astrazeneca persons in the UK. And again, I just really posited based on the incident rate, the case rate there, and just really tried to draw an analogy between, just to show persons what a real life situation will look like in Jamaica if we controlled for similar groups, similar comorbidities, and as we control for all of those. And it is quite unlikely because the ethnic background
Ethnic
in the
profile is
UK
different,
is
right?
very different from ethnic profile is quite different. But I was just trying to see in a worst case scenario or best case scenario then where everything is controlled for. This would be this could be a likely scenario if in case there's a direct link between the Astrazeneca vaccine and these blood clots. So not at all saying that these cases occur in Jamaica, not at all saying that the blood clots will happen in Jamaica, not at all saying that AstraZeneca vaccine causes a blood clot. I do not want to miss my opportunity to work for AstraZeneca in the future. All right, so definitely not saying that. I'm just looking at what the data that's currently available and what the statistics are showing. But just to highlight again, and I can't underscore it enough, that data has not yet been put to say that there's a definitive link. Right now, it is classified as probable, or in some people say possible, but definitely not a definitive link. And as I said, I fully support persons getting the vaccines. And I actually saw a news article just to drive home the point some more. One of the persons who died from a blood clot, their family actually came on and said that unfortunate, that was just an unfortunate event. The person was unlucky, but they still would advise persons to get vaccinated.
To get the vaccine. Right.
Just to show you that, it is so unlikely, it's unfortunate. I mean, I wouldn't want it to happen to myself or my relative or any of you here or any Jamaican or anybody. But the fact is that the benefit of vaccination at this point is so much greater than the minimal potential risk that any of these vaccines currently have.
Right.
Thank you so very much. I'm going to hand back to Denzel at this point.
Thank you so much, Rosemary, and to those people in the chat begging for us to continue. It's kind of we're kind of run out of time. However, gentlemen, I have 3 questions for you, and they are simply yes or no. Simply yes or no, no long thing. Does the vaccine or any of the vaccines that are being put on the market, do they alter your DNA?
No.
No.
The vaccines do not enter the nucleus. No.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Secondly, should we all take the vaccine?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right. And the third thing is begging here, guys, begging. You put together great documentation. Can we have them?
Sure.
All right. So
yes.
So, but of course, if you're going to reproduce it, just bear in mind that the statistics in them change on a daily basis.
Yes, understood. As of today, this is what it is. So I'm gonna ask Jermaine to reach out to you to pull that in.
Right. Jermaine, I think has a PDF of my presentation.
Okay, great.
So that is already available.
Great. So Professor Paul Brown, Dr. Paul McFarlane, guys, you have been great. We could have gone on forever this evening, going through a lot of questions and all sorts of permutations and all of that. But I think we got a wealth of information that we can act on. And so we thank you so much for coming on. I just want to say thanks as well to the management team who put this together. Rosemary, Jermaine, and Senia, and myself, so that at least we make that contribution to our alumni to say, hey, listen, we wanted to at least give you an opportunity, or get somebody here, or get some folks here that can give us some real information on this vaccine. Wealth of information we have, and we're going to get the documentation, which is helpful to us well. 84 persons we picked at this evening, and I thank you all for coming out. You're taking some time, probably almost 2 hours, hour and 45 minutes, I believe, to just come and be here and at least get some facts on this whole vaccine and how it can help us. So to you all, thank you so much for turning out. Good night. Yes, Jermaine.
Okay. In my updates, I forgot to officially congratulate our Schools Challenge quiz team for again winning the School Challenge Quiz competition and for the year 2021. And I'm sure we are all proud of our school. So congrats again to all the persons who are responsible for the success, the team members, the coaches and the support staff, and all members of the Alumni Association, all past students who contributed in various ways to make this thing a success this year. Kudos to you and thank you very much. Right. So this webinar, as was said by the presenters, I have copies of the presentation, so it will be shared with the wider group. The webinar is recorded, so as soon as we are through in terms of the edits and so forth, it will be uploaded to the alumni's YouTube page, and the link will be shared with everyone so we can review this very informative session. Thank you.
And remember to go on the page, subscribe, call your grandma, the kids, even the babies, just take their finger and subscribe, because we need to get that number up. I think it's 1,000 persons and then 4,000 viewing of material there before we can monetize the YouTube page. So please go there, subscribe. You can't do it more than once. Just go get the grandma, your uncle, your cousin, everybody to subscribe.
Excuse me again, then, sir. Okay, I don't want to forget our viewers who joined us by Facebook. I've been monitoring the social media page, and I've seen some comments from Facebook. So in addition to the 84 maximum that we had up to, at one point we had 10 persons from Facebook, and we had some on YouTube. So thank you also for those who joined by social media. It was a pleasure having you.
Pleasure having you all. Good night, guys, and have a productive week.
Thank you.
Okay, all the best.
Ta-ta.